In today's fast-paced environment, knowing how to sell a product is crucial for both salespeople, but for small business owners as well. And staying ahead means adapting to how the market has changed. The good news is that I'm here to guide you through that transformation. And to simplify the whole process, to sell a product effectively, you need to navigate through 6 essential steps that we're going to uncover in this video. These steps are designed to not only grab the prospect's attention, but convert that attention into interest and then into a customer. So let's begin. Kicking off our journey into mastering sales, the first thing that you've got to nail down is finding your ideal customer persona, or ICP. Think of this as the detective work, where you're piecing together a profile of your dream buyer. Why do you want to do this? Because aiming your pitch at the right crowd makes every other part of the sales process run so much more smoothly. You're looking for folks who get what you're selling, who feel the pain that your product solves, and basically already have their wallets out ready to give you some cash. And of course, you might be wondering, how the heck do I find these dream buyers? Well, it's easy. Dive back into the buyers who bought the easiest, who did the biggest deals, who closed in the quickest period of time, and try and spot the common threads between them. What job titles keep cropping up? Which industries are they in? Are there any patterns in the company's size or the location? And keep going down and down this rabbit hole until you've got a real clear idea of a set series of criteria of who your ideal, the perfect customer, who that actually is. And this detective work is going to help you sketch out a buyer persona that's not only just a shot in the dark when you're trying to find, desperately trying to find new business, but instead it's going to give you a targeted blueprint of who you actually want to go after. Now, why bother with all of this profiling? Should we not just pitch everyone that might possibly listen? Well, the benefits of going after an ideal customer persona is that this set criteria of what makes up your ICP is like having a treasure map. It leads you to sales gold. And once you've got this down, nailing a killer value proposition becomes a piece of cake, and that's what we're going to dive into next. Okay, so you've got your criteria that makes up your ideal customer persona. You've got that dream buyer in mind. Now let's chat about your value proposition. So imagine you're at a party and someone asks you, okay, so what do you do? Your value proposition is the killer response to that question that then leaves the prospect going, wow, that's awesome. Tell me more. Rather than what happens when most people get pitched at a conference or an event where they go, okay, that's great, and they're trying to get to the nearest exit. Your value proposition is your sales pitch's secret sauce. It's the promise to your buyer that you are the best at this specific thing, you know that they have this problem, and you can potentially solve it. Think of your value proposition as your pledge to your customers, minus all of the fluff and filler that you're going to want to include in there. We want to make this as simple as possible. It's where you sell the perks of working with you over the business next door, or in the modern world that we live in, perhaps the business the other side of the planet that offers a very similar service. And it's not just any promise that you're making here. It's a laser-focused, jargon-free promise that shows you get your buyer's needs like nobody else. Let me give you an example. For me, over at Salesman.com Academy, we help B2B salespeople and small business owners find and close more deals in the first 30 days or your money back. That is it. Pretty simple, right? And incredibly effective. If I share that with any small business owner or B2B salesperson, they're going, oh, find and close more deals in 30 days, all my money back. I would be stupid not to ask a few more questions and see if this is a good fit. And that's the response that you want to get when you share your value proposition with prospects, whether this be cold outreach, whether this be via referral, via upsells, whatever it is. And importantly, crafting this golden message isn't something that you can leave to chance or pass off to some random marketer in the organization who's never spoken to your customers. You, as either a B2B salesperson who's going out to the marketplace with your own messaging to generate new leads and close business, or as a small business owner or founder of a B2B organization, you've got to roll up your sleeves and build it yourself with insights gleaned from your personal understanding from your markets, from your audience. And I can't emphasize this enough. So many marketers, they've not spoken to a customer. They've certainly not spoken to many prospects over the past 12, 18 months or so. You, as a founder of the organization, as a small business owner, as an managing director, whatever your title is, or as a B2B salesperson, you're interacting, you're bumping against the market consistently day after day after day. You are in the best position within the entire organization to build this value proposition, or to build a value proposition that actually does some work and actually gets deals done and meetings booked. You're in the best position to do this, and so you need to take accountability for this process. Now, it's not complicated. A good structure to build your value proposition is I help X person solve Y problem by doing Z thing. I help small business owners, B2B salespeople, solve the prospecting and deal closing problems with a step-by-step series of frameworks and one-on-one coaching and group coaching with myself. Don't overcomplicate this. It can be as simple as that. And you'll know it's effective, as I said earlier on in the video, when the buyer turns around and goes, oh, tell me more. That's the goal. That's the only response we're trying to get here. A rock solid value proposition isn't just a nice to have, it's your secret sauce when we get onto the final step of this process, which is closing. That's right, stick around because building your ideal customer persona, booking meetings, doing all that work is absolutely pointless if you're not going to be able to close deals at the end of it. But before we get to closing, let's look at step number 3. How do we use this value proposition to get in front of our buyers and to book more meetings in the diary? Well, welcome to the world of what's called sales cadences. This is a fancy way of saying a killer follow-up plan that converts people who don't know who you are, or maybe they're a warm lead and they get the gist of what you do, into a place where they want to meet with you, they're booking time in your calendar, and they're excited to share their problems, their issues, their pains, and hopefully get a solution of how to solve them. And this is where many sales processes just fall apart. Because without a plan, without building out this sales cadence, this step-by-step process, this meeting booking machine, well, you're just throwing darts in the dark and you're hoping to hit the board. And here's the deal. Winging it in sales, especially in this sales cadence process, is like trying to bake a cake by guessing the ingredients. And spoiler alert here, obviously you could have a proper shit cake at the end of the day if that's your approach to baking. A structured sales cadence is your recipe for success. It simplifies your outreach, it lets you scale without turning into a spam monster, and it inherently has a feedback loop which allows you to iterate and gives you the insights to tweak and improve your process day in, day out. And let's again simplify this further. The end game of your sales cadence is to get your customers to book a call. You're not trying to seal the deal off the bat. You're not trying to educate your buyers particularly. All you're trying to do is book a call. And the best way to do that is with what's called the curiosity loop. So a cadence might consist of emails, cold calls, LinkedIn messages. If your buyers are on other forms of social media, fantastic, you can prospect them there as well. It might include knocking on doors, like what I used to do in medical device sales. I would walk up to a theatre, I'd knock on the door, show my badge, they'd be excited to see me because of the company I represent, because I've got brand new surgical toys for the surgeons to play with, I'd get invited in. It could include all of these things, conferences, in-person events, your own webinars, or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. What you got to focus on is highlighting a problem that the buyer either doesn't realize they have, and when you highlight it, they go, oh crap, that's me, or highlighting a problem that they already have that they find painful, and then to build curiosity by teasing them, literally teasing them that there is the possibility that you have the solution to that issue. So do you see how the dynamic is slightly different here? Most sales prospecting is, we can definitely solve this for you, and it's a bunch of bravado, and it just comes across like you're full of shit. I can't make it any more frank than that. All the cold emails that I see, that I get personally as a managing director of a company here in the UK, Salesman.com, they're terrible. They're rubbish. And every single time I'm thinking, well, if you're that good at this or that or this, why isn't there a list of like 1,000 companies and loads of testimonials that you've worked with? Because that inevitably is never true. So instead, think of it differently. You want to tease the buyer that you might have the solution to their problem. This opens up way more curiosity than you proclaiming that you can solve every issue under the sun that the buyer may or may not have. And this is where the magic happens. You only allow the buyer to find out if you have the solution to their problem by jumping on a quick call. Because you need to diagnose, you need to ask a few questions. You need to make sure if all of this is a good fit for the both of you. And if you can spark enough curiosity about solving the issue, they're going to be dialing your number in no time. They're going to be booking meetings in your calendar. And if you want to get into the more practical elements of this, and there's a bunch of templates and other resources, you can grab a free copy of my book, Selling Made Simple. There's a whole chapter on there. Well, there's actually 4 chapters in there. There's a chapter on sales cadences, the structure, the methodologies behind them. Then there's chapters on cold email, cold call, social outreach. There's a bunch of content in here that will give you everything you need to do from a practical standpoint to book more meetings with a systematic step-by-step cadence. And the final thing to think about with your sales cadence when you're happy that you're sparking enough curiosity to book a meeting is that you need to systematize your outreach. You need to stick to a predefined series of sales activities. So that could be day 1, we call, voicemail. If no answer and no response to the voicemail, we drop them an email saying, hey, we will call again on Wednesday morning or whatever it areas. So that's your sales activities. You're then going to group them together into daily plays, and then we're going to stick these plays into a series of steps that become your cadence. And the goal here is to book as many meetings as you possibly can and fill out your diary, to book enough meetings that you close enough deals on the back end of it to smash your quota. That's obviously the goal. But the meta goal beneath that is to understand that for every 100 people you put in your cadence, you book X number of meetings out of the other end. So my cadence over at salesman.com Academy at the moment, where I'm prospecting VPs of sales to get teams into our program, books meetings at around a 20% meeting booking rate. It's kind of 21, 22% at this very moment in time. So I know that every 2 weeks, I want to book a medium-sized team into our training program. Now I know our closing rate. So I know that for every one deal that I need to get in the books, I need to get X number of meetings in the diary, which means I need to do Y amount of outreach every week to keep that machine ticking over and to get those deals done. And that immediately takes all of the stress away from my prospecting. Sure, on a week-to-week basis, it kind of fluctuates, that's absolutely fine. But over a monthly and then quarterly basis, the numbers are absolutely rock solid and proven. And by building your cadence like this and by fine-tuning it and getting the numbers to stick, you get rid of this up and down boom and bust cycle that every small business owner and B2B salesperson goes through. And this eliminates what's called the roller coaster cycle of sales, where you get a bunch of leads on the go, you close some deals, but at the time that you're spending closing the deals, you don't do any prospecting, so it goes to shit. Then you panic because now you need to either make payroll or you're behind on your quota, so you do a load of prospecting. Do a bunch of activity, leads to a bunch of deals, and then it goes to shit. And up and down and up and down. What we want is your results to do this over time. And the only way to do that is with a systematic, proven, step-by-step cadence. So now that you've got the gist of a cadence, stay tuned. Because next we're going to look at how to dig into your buyer's real challenges. We're going to put our doctor's hat on and do some diagnosis. After setting the stage and booking the meeting with your cadence, it's showtime. It's time for the diagnosis call. Now, there is tons of content on this YouTube channel for how to run a diagnosis call. There's also a full chapter in the Sell Made Simple book, which gives you all the questions you need to ask to make that happen, which you can download over at salesman.com for free. But something to think about within your diagnosis call is to ease into your pitch rather than just dive into it, which makes the buyer feel a little bit uncomfortable. So we want to use the diagnosis questions from other content on this channel and then the book itself as well. And then we want to transition into a pitch. So we don't start a diagnosis call with, this is my hypothesis, I can solve this problem, we are the greatest, you should definitely do business with us. No, think about it from the context of sitting down at a GP surgery, at a doctor's surgery, and you've got a pain. The doctor's going to ask you a series of questions before they pivot from the diagnosis into giving you potential solutions. And you need to do the same on your diagnosis calls as well. So rather than diving straight into your pitch, diagnose and then use a transition statement like, I think we can help. Would you like me to explain how? And when they say yes, because of course, who wouldn't want to get their problem solved? You've now just earned the green light to share your solution. And this approach works so well because it feels way less like a sales pitch at this point, and more like you're offering them a helping hand. Like you're a consultant rather than a salesperson. You're asking permission and turning the whole thing into a two-way conversation. And this is an absolute game changer because this is what's called a pattern interrupt. This separates you from all of the competing, just pushy salespeople. Because I run a B2B sales training organization, right? Even I hate engaging with crappy salespeople who are dead pushy. And so we can all imagine what your prospects feel like. And so this pattern interrupts the whole process and gets your buyer on board for the next few steps, which is hopefully getting the deal done. Now, with that said, for the grand finale, moving towards the close without making it awkward. This should come at the end of your diagnosis call. This should come at the end of every single conversation that you have. This is a process called micro-closing. And the goal here is to get yes, 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 yes across the entirety of the sales process, rather than just going for one big close at the end of it. And the easiest way to micro-close is with a statement like, does it make sense to do this? Does it make sense to take this next step? It's smooth, it's respectful, and it opens the door for the buyer to go, yeah, let's do this. It does make sense to do that. And again, you take all of the sales pressure out of the situation because the prospect is now thinking, yeah, I did agree to do this. I do want to move forward. It does make sense to make that next step. But what happens if you can't close your B2B deal, which is mainly the situation that most B2B salespeople and founders find themselves in, if you can't close that deal on one call? Well, in that case, you need to follow up. And if you're following up and hitting a wall of objections every single time, it's time for a bit of a reality check. First, sketch out where your buyer currently stands Ask them to lay out the facts, the real numbers of where things are at. Hey, you told me that this is a problem. What do those numbers look like? Let's make things logical in our follow-up. Then we need to dive into how this problem is still affecting them. If your follow-up meetings are weeks apart, which they shouldn't be, they should be as short and as concise as possible to shrink your deal cycle length. But let's say they are a few weeks apart. The buying temperature from this initial call that you had with the buyer, where you did all the diagnosis, you transitioned towards the pitch and the close, that buying temperature is dropping all the time. So we might, on our follow-up calls, need to do a mini bit of diagnosis just to reaffirm that the problem is still affecting the prospect. Are they pulling out extra hours to get this work done? Are they missing out on their professional or business goals? How is it making them feel? Are they stressed? Are they overwhelmed? Double down on this in your follow-up. This doesn't just happen in the diagnosis call. To keep the buying temperature high, we need to do this consistently throughout the entirety of the sales process. Next up in your follow-up, start to paint a picture of what things could look like if they actually solved this problem. So this is the reality gap method, which again is covered in detail in the book, but understanding where they are, where they want to get to, and help the prospect imagine hitting those sales targets, feeling that stress melt away, regaining their confidence, whatever it is. And here is the clincher. You want to position yourself as the bridge between their current reality and their future reality. And your goal is to start to stretch these apart. If your buyer's current reality is right by their future reality, they're thinking, well, I'll just read a book on this, or I'll just spend the weekend working this out for myself. The further and further these two things get away from each other, the more this looks like the Grand Canyon rather than the crack in a wall. They're going to feel like they've got no choice but to jump to the other side with your help, of course. And this is the basis of the majority of your follow-up communication with your prospect. In your original diagnosis call, you both agreed that there's a pain and you're the right person to fix it. And so on each one of your follow-up calls, you've got to make sure that that pain stays there and the pain of taking no action gets even bigger over time so that they then become excited to get the contracts signed. And finally, for this video, let me show you how to close this sales circle by closing itself. So, and you've all been here, I've been here as well, right? Get an agreement that you can solve someone's problem, that they've got the budget, that they have the authority to sign off on things, that they're essentially qualified. But that doesn't mean anything until the buyer pays you the cash and your product is delivered or your service is implemented. And to do that, we're going to use the salesman.com closing framework. Now, a lot of sellers get stressed about the closing process. They think it's this big, crazy, magical moment where you ask for the business from the buyer and maybe they give it to you. But there's a better way of closing your sales. We're going to follow this two-step process to make it happen. First, we're going to ask the question, does it make sense to? And it could be, does it make sense for me to send over the contracts? Or does it make sense to get this wrapped up today? Or does it make sense to get Barry from finance involved so we can move this forward? Doesn't matter what it is. And as I said earlier on in the video, we want to micro close throughout the entirety of the sales process with, does it make sense to? Does it make sense to? Does it make sense to? And if the buyer says yes, congratulations, you closed the deal. Everyone's happy, we're all moving forward. But what if they say no? If they do say no, don't panic. It's fine. It can almost be a positive situation to find yourself in some ways. So you're going to respond to their no with, no worries. What do we need to do to move this forward? And that's it. You wait for them to coach you on how to solve the problem. And if you've implemented all of the steps of the Seller Made Simple process up until this point, they're going to be happy to coach you. They want to work with you. They want you to solve this issue for them. And so they'll tell you what they need to do or what you need to do to get that next step completed. And then when you get it completed, you loop back around, okay, now we've solved this. Does it make sense to move things forward? Does it make sense to get the contract signed? If they say no again, then you're okay, well, what does it make sense to do? You solve that problem, you loop back around. You do this as many times as what you need to get the deal done. And that is it. That is closing. Everyone overcomplicates the entirety of the sales process. But when you break it down into these 5 steps, you make selling simple. You make the buying journey for your prospects simple. They start enjoying it, you start enjoying it, and hopefully you're closing a bunch more deals and making a shit ton of money on the back of it as well. So there we have it, the 5 steps to selling any product. And if you enjoyed this video, why not click the video that's on the screen right now and continue making selling simple.